Hello, everyone, and thank you for taking the time to review the real estate market analysis for Morgan Hill for October of 2009. My name is Robert Whitelaw. I'm a licensed real estate broker in the state of California. I'm also a member of the National Association of Realtors and a certified ePro. And I'm also the president and CEO of Whitelaw & Sons Real Estate Services, serving all of Silicon Valley. Now, there are a variety of ways to get in contact with me. You can get me through my website at www.soldbyrobert.com. You not only get access to these videos through that website, but you can also get access to my weekly podcast on all things relating to real estate and how they might affect you in your buying, selling, or investing goals. You'll also get access to a fantastic multiple listing service search tool that will search for anything from San Francisco all the way down to Monterey, and it's map-based, so it's very easy to focus in on the areas that you're interested in without having to know where one city begins and one city ends. You'll also get access to the real estate articles I've written over the past years, and I think some of them are pretty good at exposing some of the shortcomings of the real estate business and are a great tool to have in your kit if you ever consider going out and buying or selling in real estate. It can give you some good tips on the right things to be thinking about when you enter into a real estate transaction. Now, if you're interested in contacting me directly via email, you can just send those to robert@soldbyrobert.com. If you'd prefer to talk to me directly via phone, just dial 408-852-0525. Or if you'd rather contact me using any of the popular online instant messaging software like AOL Instant Messenger, Google Talk, or Yahoo IM, just use the screen name The Rebel Broker. And if you're a Skype user, the screen name is simply Rebel Broker. And of course, referrals are always appreciated. If you or anyone you know is interested in buying, selling, or investing in real estate in the Silicon Valley area, please give me a call. I'll be happy to help in any way I can. And even if you are interested in buying real estate somewhere outside of the area that I serve directly, I can still help you track down the perfect agent for your needs. So go ahead and get in contact with me using any of the methods outlined above, and I'll jump through all the hoops to find the perfect agent for you wherever you are in the United States. Now let's go ahead and jump in and take a look at the numbers for Morgan Hill. Now these numbers reflect just the month of October, going all the way back to 1999, so 10 years worth of Octobers. This way we don't have to worry about adjusting for seasonal influences. This is the same time of year every year, so it makes it a little bit easier to read these numbers. And you can see that we really got hit hard in Morgan Hill. The inventory started to rise earlier than a lot of other areas right there in 2005 and just really went through the roof in 2006 with a follow-on increase in 2007, sort of plateauing out there in 2008 with a big dramatic drop here in 2009. In fact, the drop was down. The inventory was down 42.46%. That is 138 fewer homes on the market in October of 2009 than we had at the same time in 2008. That gave us a grand total of 187 homes on the market in Morgan Hill. If we take a look at the homes that were added to the marketplace, this is good news for us here in Morgan Hill, simply because it's just a lower number. This is a good number to see decreasing. You can see it sort of peaked there in 2007 with a dramatic decrease in 2008 and then a continuing decrease in 2009. New listings are actually down 6.15%. That's 4 fewer homes listed in the month of October of 2009 at the same time last year. That gave us a grand total of 61 homes that were listed in Morgan Hill. And if we take a look at the number of homes that sold, that's also very good news. Now you can see we reached rock bottom in 2007, a little bit of an increase in 2008, and a pretty dramatic increase in 2009 for October. It was actually up. Sales were up 68% from the same time last year. That is 17 more homes sold in October of 2009 than in October of 2008. That gave us a grand total of 45 homes sold, and those are very good numbers. If we can keep this up and get that ratio between homes that are sold and total inventory closer together, the better off we will be. Now, that gives us a grand total of 4.45 months of inventory on hand. And what that basically means is if the inventory numbers froze where they are right now, and the homes that are being sold froze right now, it would take us just shy of 4.5 months to sell off all the homes currently on the market. Now, that's a pretty healthy number. Anything in the 3-4 range, I think, is actually a healthy balance. It also can be thought of as a competition index for sellers. So for every home that has sold, there's been about 4.5 homes on the market. That's not bad. I mean, it's a lot better than having the 12, 16, 18, 24 homes on the market for every one that's sold that we've had in the past. If you look back in 2007, that ratio was crazy, and sellers were having a very tough time getting any attention for their properties just because of the sheer number of homes on the market. Now, to sort of give you an idea of how that fits in with the county ratio was at 4.66. So we're actually outperforming the county by a little bit. Excuse me, I'm sorry. Last month's ratio was 4.66 for Morgan Hill. So we've gotten better from September to October. The county was actually at 3.12, so we are not performing as well as the county in general, and that's actually more typical for Morgan Hill. We don't tend to do quite as well as the average for the county. So for Morgan Hill, we've still got a ways to go to catch up with any averages for the county. But again, these are still good and encouraging numbers given what we've had to go through over the past couple of years. Now let's go ahead and take a look at the same numbers, but this time instead of looking just at the month of October, we're going to look straight back chronologically to May of '08, month to month. So we'll be able to just see how things have been panning out. Now, because of the smaller number of transactions that take place in Morgan Hill when compared to the county, you might see some strange spikes or decreases that are just simply because one or two sales can have a dramatic effect on the numbers we see, and that'll be true in everything we look at, with particularly things like average sales price and days on market. Now, in this case, you can see that the trend here is clearly downward. Inventory is on its way down. We've had a couple of months where inventory has jumped a little bit, for instance, back in October of '08, so a year ago. What's interesting, though, is that the new trend is definitely down. We're not seeing relatively flat. Between September and October, things were relatively flat, but we had a pretty steady decline from January right on through, and that's actually sort of interesting. We usually get a little bit of a bump just before the summer months, but we really didn't get that in October in this year, in 2009. So it's good actually to see that the overwhelming trend has been for inventory to go down. Inventory between September and October increased by 2.75%. That was 5 more homes in the inventory in October than in September. Now let's go ahead and take a look at those listing numbers. You can see that listings are actually up by 48.78% when compared just to last month. That's 20 more homes listed. But in general, while just from month to month we've seen this go up, in general the number of listings has been trending downward. You can see that really we've been seeing a steady decline since about March. I mean, March we saw a little bit of a bump there in May, but really in general it's been trending downward. And it's a little unusual to see an increase like that in October. If you look at last year, you can see that we had a downward trend as well that continued right on through to these winter months. And then usually once winter is over, we'll see inventory numbers go up again. I think what this reflects is that we simply had some folks who didn't really have a choice. Usually when you're listing your home in October, it's because you don't have any choice but to list it in October. You're not thinking in terms of what the best time of year is to get your home sold. You simply have to get it sold so it gets listed immediately. Let's see. The sales numbers were actually up. We saw a 7.69% increase in sales from September to October. That's 3 more homes sold in October than the previous month. And the good news is that the average number of sales is increasing. So all the numbers that need to be coming down are coming down. All the numbers that need to be going up are going up. So in general, that's a good indicator that the market is at the very least coming to a more stable level where buyers and sellers aren't in any great position of advance over the other. It's a little bit more of a balanced market, and I think that's a lot healthier and something that I think we'd prefer to see rather than some of these lopsided, totally favoring the buyer or totally favoring the seller type of markets. Now let's take a look at how the sales broke up. How many of them were short sales, how many were foreclosures, and how many were conventional. We'll start off with this month. Now you can see 51% of the homes that sold were conventionally sold. And what that means is a seller just decided to sell their house, put it on the market, and managed to get it done. There were no foreclosure procedures involved. There weren't any short sale procedures involved. But we are seeing 31% of the homes that sold in October being foreclosures. That's a pretty big number. 18% were short sales. Again, we're not beating the county in general on these numbers. The county in general is seeing more conventional sales as a percentage of sales than we are here in Morgan Hill. Now, if we compare this to last month, you can see we've actually gotten into a better position. Last month, we had as many foreclosures as we did conventionals. I mean, it was 41%, which is crazy to have that many foreclosures. Short sales stayed steady at 18% when compared to last month. So at least we're catching up on conventional sales are taking up more and more of the market, and I'd much rather see that happening than having to see folks go through the foreclosure process. Now let's go ahead and take a look at home prices. What have they been doing? The average home price, as you can see here when compared to the same time last year, is down 22.61%. That's a dollar change of $176,389. And the average home price was $603,651. Let's go ahead and take a look at what the median price was. And you can see it's just a little bit below what the average price was. What that basically tells us is that the volume of sales tended to be below that, so below the average price. So while the average price may have been $603,000, most of the more homes sold below that price than sold above it. The median price was $555,500. And what that basically tells you is that half the homes that sold were above $555,000 and half the homes that sold were below $555,000. Now, the median change from last year, it's down 20.64%. That's a $144,500 drop. Now, the highest priced single-family residential home at Morgan Hill was at 15209 Sycamore Drive. That property sold for $1,560,000. Interesting to note that that was a short sale property. Its original list price was $1,750,000. It was on the market for 148 days. What's interesting to note is that number, that original list price of $1.75 million, is actually not correct. It was originally listed in November of 2007 for $2,995,000, so just shy of $3 million. I think one problem with that property was there was an awful lot of listed price fluctuation and a very, even given the circumstances at the time it was originally listed, that was a pretty unrealistic asking price. So unfortunately it suffered from that and ended up rolling right into short sales. It sounds like these folks didn't have much of a choice on the asking price. They had to ask what they were asking. And ultimately short sale procedures had to make that work for them. Now the lowest priced single family residential home in Morgan Hill was at 6760 Croy Ridge Road. That sold for $165,000. It originally listed for $475,000. And that property was on the market for 230 days. So it spent a lot of time trying to get sold. Now, the average price per square foot in Morgan Hill was $255.45. That's down from last month's price per square foot of $269.35. All right, now let's go ahead and take a look at the same numbers. But again, we're just looking month to month just to see if we can see any other kinds of trends in the more magnified data. And again, these are numbers that can tend to seem to jump and drop simply based on one or two properties that are at the higher end. Like as we mentioned this month, we had a $1.5 million property sell. So that tends to artificially raise those numbers. And of course, any other month where we had something even higher than that, those numbers are going to skew upward a little bit. You can see, though, that the general trend is clearly down. Things have been relatively flat, actually, since February of 2009, which is interesting. And I think that's the way to interpret this data, is that while we have seen a general trend downward over the last, 7 months, 6 months, 8 months, the general trend has been relatively flat, relatively little change in the average sales price of the properties in Morgan Hill. Now, if we take a look at the median price, that's also staying within a fairly tight range over the last period of months. And in fact, when you start looking at the median price, you realize it's staying at more of a steady level than the average price. You can see we've had months like March and January where the average price was way above the median price, which tells you that it wasn't so much a real increase in the average sales. It was really one property that sold at the higher end. Now the changes, the average home price was $603,000, $651,000. The percentage price change from September to October was an increase of 5.98%. That was a dollar change of $34,048. The median price change was up 2.87%. That's a $15,500 increase. And we had a grand total of 45 homes that sold in Morgan Hill. Now let's take a look at the days to sell numbers. An interesting thing that you might see if you check the data for days on market numbers is that when sales increase, this number tends to increase because you're dropping the inventory as you reach deeper into the inventory to sell off properties. You're grabbing onto properties that have been on the market for quite some time. Right now we're sitting at 110 days. That's a 1.85% increase from the same time last year. That's 2 more days to get a home sold this year than last year. I'd call that just pretty much staying steady. Now, as far as you sellers out there calibrating yourselves to expectations, we'll cover some numbers here that'll give you a little bit of a better understanding of where you might fall. So much of this is going to depend on how your home is priced, how it's been staged to be sold, how it's being marketed by your real estate professional. But 110, I've reviewed this data, and 110 is a pretty good number. But let me give you some more data here. So you can kind of get an idea. It's a little encouraging, actually, for most folks. Now, the lowest days on market was one. We had one property that sold in one day. The longest days on market was 589, and the next closest to that was 441. If we break that down into smaller chunks, we had 6 homes that sold in the first week. So 6 homes sold in 1 to 7 days. 13 homes sold in 8 to 30 days. 5 homes sold in 31 to 60 days. 4 homes sold in 61 to 90 days. 8 homes sold in 91 to 180 days. And 9 homes sold in 180 days or greater. Now, if you look at that and just focus on those first 30 days, 42% of the homes that sold in 30 days or less. So that's a pretty big chunk of the market that managed to get their property sold relatively quickly. If you're doing everything right, there is still every realistic possibility that you could get your home in an escrow within the first 30 days of you marketing it. But it's as we've talked about in just about every other presentation I've ever done here, so much of that is going to hinge on what your agent is doing for you. There was a lot of reasonable complaint on the part of a lot of sellers that their agents weren't working too hard to get a lot of their properties sold back when things were selling as soon as they were listed. I mean, as soon as they went onto the MLS, people were making offers on them. And now with many properties, in order for sellers to get the absolute best price, their agents really have to work for their money. And if you're not feeling like your agent is working that hard for your sale to happen, you really need to have a conversation with them, and it needs to happen quickly. You don't have time to waste, frankly, with some of the credits and things that are going on now until the end of the year. It makes a lot of sense for you to make sure that you're reaching out to as many buyers as possible. Now let's go ahead and take a look at these same numbers just going back months again, and we'll see how things sort of have been averaging out. You can see that we've had some peaks, a couple of low points. We're sort of stabilized here at 110 days. That 158 days, there were a couple of houses there that had been on the market for an awfully long time. So things have actually been relatively flat since May. No big surprises here. Now the number of days to sell has increased when compared to September by 5.77%. That's 6 more days to get a home sold in October than in September. Now, this is the layout of where the properties have been located. It's good to see some of these properties that are sort of out a little further. There's some beautiful properties that aren't often thought of as Morgan Hill properties that are up in the hills. And a couple of those managed to sell this month, and that's good news. But again, most of it's been focused in the main part of town. You'll notice over by the lake, by Lake Anderson, properties numbered 13, 39, 31 in that area. Those are some beautiful properties up there, and that's a community I'm very fond of, partially because I live there. But it's also good to see a lot more activity happening there. We had quite a few months where nothing was happening, and it was good to see those homes finally manage to get sold. Some of them have been on the market for a while. Now, again, I do appreciate you taking the time to listen to these market analysis, and I hope hope they are helpful for you. I won't drag you through the process of reading all of these off to you again. I just thought it'd be helpful to have all of my contact information available to you again in case you'd like to jot it down. Look forward to talking to you all next time, and I hope that you are able to reach all of your real estate goals.